Hey everyone, and welcome back. Are you ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to tackle Canada's brand new immigration levels plan for 2025 to 2027.
Ooh, exciting.
It is, especially because this time they've included targets for temporary residents, not just those seeking permanent residency. It's a first.
Hmm.
We're going straight to the source, the official plan document, to see what's what. Have you ever wondered how Canada actually decides how many people to welcome each year?
Yeah, actually. It's always seemed kind of mysterious to me.
Right. Well, this levels plan, it's like their 3-year outlook. And get this, they're considering everything, not just economics. They're thinking about social integration, their international obligations, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, that's pretty comprehensive. So what are some of the highlights? Anything surprising in there?
Well, for starters, they're actually hitting the brakes a bit on permanent resident targets starting in 2025.
Oh, really? That's a pretty big shift.
It is. It's the first time they've done that. Looks like they're aiming for what they call well-managed sustainable growth. Basically, they want to make sure that growth doesn't outpace things like housing and healthcare, essential
Makes
services.
sense. Can't have too many people coming in if there's not enough to support them.
Exactly. But even with the reduction, they're still prioritizing those who are already in Canada.
Oh,
Yeah. Over 40% of the anticipated permanent residents in 2025, they'll already be here, living as temporary residents.
so if you're already in Canada, you've got a leg up.
Big time. Think about it. You got a head start. Integrating, understanding the culture, maybe picking up some French along the way. Smoother transition to becoming a permanent resident. Benefits everyone, really.
Hmm, that's interesting. So does this mean the door is closed for those who are looking to come from overseas?
Not at all. We're just talking about a shift in priorities, not a complete shutdown. Canada is still welcoming newcomers. There are still pathways for economic immigration, family reunification, all the humanitarian programs.
That's good to hear. I know a lot of people are watching these developments closely.
For sure, especially with the labor shortages Canada's facing right now,
Yeah.
especially in healthcare and the trades.
Oh, yeah, I've been hearing about that. Tough to find skilled workers these days.
No kidding.
Yep.
But this plan, it addresses that head on. By 2027, they're aiming for about 62% of all permanent residents to be in the economic category.
Well, that's a lot.
And a big chunk of that is going to be focused on attracting skilled workers in those very areas we just talked about, healthcare and trades.
So if you're a nurse or a plumber, Canada's calling.
You got it. But what if you're not just a skilled worker, but also hoping to bring your family?
Right, because immigration is often a family affair.
Absolutely. Well, good news. Family reunification, it's still a key part of the plan. Almost 24% of admissions in 2025 are earmarked for this. So spouses, partners, kids, parents, grandparents, they can all potentially join their loved ones.
That's reassuring. It seems like they're trying to find a balance between economic needs and keeping families together.
You hit the nail on the head. They're looking for people who are likely to integrate well, contribute to the economy. Makes sense from a policy perspective. But Canada also has humanitarian commitments, right?
Of course, and those are definitely still a priority. The plan lays out pathways for refugees, protected persons. Plus, they're stepping up efforts to strengthen Francophone communities outside of Quebec. They've even set targets for French-speaking immigrants, aiming for 10% by 2027. It's a fascinating mix.
It is. And speaking of fascinating mixes, this plan doesn't just stop at permanent residents. They're tackling temporary residents, too. For the first time ever, Canada's setting targets for this group.
Wow, really? What's the goal there?
The big goal. Reduce the number of temporary residents to 5% of the total population.
And that includes?
It includes temporary foreign workers and international students, all of them.
So a pretty significant portion of the population.
You bet. And they're aiming to achieve this over the next 3 years.
Ambitious. What's driving this change? Why the focus on reducing temporary residents?
Well, there are a few reasons. The plan talks about concerns about temporary residents facing, well, kind of precarious work situations.
I see.
Yeah, and they're also looking at the challenges temporary residents face when it comes to accessing things like healthcare and social services.
So it's about creating a more sustainable system, ensuring everyone has a fair shot.
Exactly. And it's not just about cutting numbers. They're also setting targets for how many new workers and students can come in.
So it's more about managing the flow rather than slamming the door shut.
Right. Now, how they're actually going to achieve this 5% target, well, that's where things get interesting. They're talking about caps on international students and temporary foreign workers. They even mention reforms to the post-graduation work permit program.
Oh, the PGWPP. That's a big one for international students hoping to stay in Canada after they graduate.
Huge. And then there's the talk about limiting work permits for spouses of temporary residents.
Wait, really? That seems like a big change.
It is. and it's likely to spark some debate.
I can imagine. What's the thinking behind that, do you know?
Well, the government's argument is that it'll encourage spouses to pursue their own economic pathways, instead of just relying on their partner's work permit.
So both partners contributing to the economy. Interesting.
But yeah, lots of people are wondering, will this make it tougher for families to settle in, to integrate together?
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Definitely. And the plan actually acknowledges that they need to do more research, more analysis to really understand the full impact of these measures.
It's a complex issue for sure.
Totally. It's a balancing act, trying to manage the number of temporary residents while also making sure that those who are here, they have the chance to build a good life.
It's about creating a system that works for everyone, both newcomers and Canadians who are already here.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But before we get too deep into the weeds, let's not forget about the elephant in the room, the rising number of asylum seekers coming to Canada.
Ah, yes, that's a crucial topic. And it really highlights the tension between managing immigration levels and upholding those humanitarian obligations we talked about earlier.
Right. And we're going to unpack that whole issue along with Canada's plan to address it when we come back. Stay tuned. All right. So we've got to talk about asylum seekers in Canada. Seems like a hot topic these days.
It is, and it really shows the tightrope walk Canada is doing.
Yeah.
They want to manage immigration, but they got to stay true to their humanitarian promises.
Absolutely. The number of asylum seekers, it's been climbing. What's Canada doing about it?
Well, for starters, they're putting in a partial visa requirement for Mexican nationals.
Oh, interesting. What does that mean?
It means that some Mexican nationals will now need a visa to enter Canada. The data shows that, sadly, a lot of asylum claims from Mexico, they end